Lila was little gymnast, flipping around cartwheels every day.
That was her life. She loved everything with that.
One night I was at gymnastics, just couldn't stand. I just couldn't put any weight on it at all.
She's like, it's just not right. So we end up getting some scans, and that's what revealed the stress fractures.
And they said, yep, we'll keep her off of it for sort of 10 days or so. Put her in a boot for 10 days. Should be fine.
The day I remember we took it off, we got her out of the car and she was on the driveway at home.
She went to put her foot down.
And pins and needles shot all the way up my leg.
She literally just collapsed in agony.
Stacey and I looked at each other and said,
oh my gosh, what's going on?
Your foot should be better now.
They didn't know what was wrong with it because they'd done an MRI and X-ray and they found nothing.
Went back into hospital and they were like, that's strange. Looks like the stress fractures have resolved. Might be CRPS.
They diagnosed her with the complex regional pain syndrome.
What does this mean? What's CRPS?
CRPS is the highest rating pain you can have. It's higher rated than childbirth.
I couldn't touch my leg, move my toes. When I say touch my leg, I couldn't, the wind couldn't even touch it.
So we sort of started out orthopaedic surgeon, physiotherapist, and OT. And because the pain is just so intense, they sort of say, yeah, okay, we perhaps will introduce a pain specialist. So in Lil's case, her pain just from that day that she put her leg down, she was just in agony all day, every day. It was relentless. She would have burning sensation, stabbing pain, you name it. Every description of pain that you could think of under the sun.
She wouldn't get believed. You get looked at strangely. And you get people say, oh, it'll be right. Just walk on it, push through the pain. There's nothing wrong with her. She's fine. It's in her head.
And she just kind of kept getting worse and worse.
I'd be in heaps of pain and I'd be up all night just crying. I'd probably get 2 hours of sleep a night.
We're doing all the physio stretches, we're doing all the exercises. She was just in debilitating pain 24/7. We're just desperately hoping that she was going to get a breakthrough soon.
The CRPS spread up her leg.
Despite our best efforts and her best efforts of doing everything that they were sort of asking of her every day.
So she was literally straight-legged, foot was then locked in a ballerina position.
If I tried to move it, it just wouldn't move.
The pain specialist was like, all right, let's try a sympathetic nerve block. And the first one worked, but the minute that the nerve block wore off, it was back in full force.
So she couldn't go out in the wind. A car ride was horrific for her.
Her pain was so bad that she'd start passing out.
One of the therapists grabbed her foot one day to try and move it, which was a big no-no.
That was our first sort of experience with her brain or her body or that protective mechanism shutting down from the sheer magnitude of the pain.
From that day, I started passing out.
It started happening more and more often. So we went from it happening for 1 minute to multiple times a rehab session to our child is just suffering so badly.
She gets a little feeling that the pain's coming, and then she basically would have to hold her, or she'd sit down and she'd just have effectively what they diagnosed was a non-epileptic seizure. And it was just heartbreaking to watch.
And they started out as short ones, then they would go longer and longer and longer. She couldn't go to school. She could barely leave the couch or the end of our bed. She was just crippled by it.
Very, very dark times, not just for her, for Stacey and myself as well. And you sit there and go, how do we help? But she's your child.
And so we tried an inpatient stay because intensive rehab is the gold standard once you've tried everything else. It worked, and she got to the point where she could weight bear again. We're like, oh my God, she's beaten this, she's going to be fine. But then the pain gradually started coming back, and we're like, this doesn't make sense, what's going on?
From there, she slipped on her crutches in the wet, went on it, landed on her knee.
And then that was one of the accidents, and that just made everything worse. And then I was still having the seizures, and that made my seizures even worse.
From there, she was having seizures every 30 minutes or so.
We were just helpless, completely helpless to stop it.
We had to get her in the wheelchair because we couldn't risk having a fall, hitting her head, knocking her leg, or doing anything when we weren't around.
She was a shadow, literally a shadow of the child that she was 2 years before that.
I pulled one of the doctors aside and I said, listen, tell me, Frank, will she ever walk again? And he said, probably not.
When you've tried so many things, you've tried every kind of specialist.
Pain specialist, we've had 2 different pain specialists, orthopaedic surgeon,
Tried like acupuncture as well.
exercise physiologist, OT,
Tried osteotherapy.
kinesiology,
Neurotherapy, we tried.
hypnotherapy.
Every type of physical therapy that you could think of.
You name it, she's tried it. And everyone tells her she's going to get better.
By this stage, we were sort of like really starting to get disillusioned because we were like, she's putting in so much effort to get better.
But we're getting nowhere.
We sort of were trying to recalibrate and reset and go, what now? Like, what now?
Do we try again? But we had to try. She's my little princess and, want to make sure she's right.
We just didn't know what else to do.
Meeting Kyle was the first time we did a Zoom with him. And I remember Lila was passing out at the time. He said, can you take the camera up to her? So she was passed out. And she'd have these seizures every 20 minutes. I think she had 2 or 3 on the hour. And it's the first hope we kind of had was literally in that meeting there. He's like, okay, I can see the eyes are going to do this, back, forth, left, right. The arms would go up or something, the arms went up. And he could actually piece together what was already happening and gone, yep, I can treat that.
He knew we'd been through, like, Lila's journey had been horrific.
Everything for him is through the brain. This is different. This is working out individually what each person has, and especially with the CRPS and other things that get treated here. This is what we've got to focus on. This is the part of the brain.
Kyle completely at every point, like, just ran through with us the reason behind everything. Everything was happening neurologically, what path connected to what, which connected to what, which led to what.
She came in here, crutches, leg straight, unable to bend her knee, unable to wiggle, touch, move her toes. If I cut her toenail, she'd pass out.
The first week, got a pain drop down from a 8 to a 6 or a 5.
Look at that. See?
She would basically just involuntarily just do a little movement of the toes.
Just the tiniest little toe twitch.
And I remember Stacey and I sitting there with Daniel going, did you see that? Did you see that?
And then that became a tiny little ankle twitch. And pain down to a 5.
And then the second week I got to a 4, and then a few weeks later I got to be able to move my ankle, and the progress has just like kept on coming and coming.
And then her pain came down to a 2.
She'd been living with pain for, 2.5 years. Going from there to go, she could walk out of here.
Physically, you could see she was healing. I just remember thinking, we've actually got genuine, renewed hope that she's going to recover. And it was because we were here.
Seizures, walking, legs, knees, toes, all within 5 weeks.
5 weeks I've been here is more progress than I've made in the whole entire 2 years of my CRPS. So yeah.
It's been nearly 2.5 years since she walked, being unable to move even a toe to literally standing on her foot, weight bearing, standing and taking her first steps walking.
What gets me excited is knowing that I have hope again, and that I am going to be able to start running and walking and jumping and playing all my sports and hanging out with my friends and walking my dog. So that all gets me really excited.
For her to watch what she's gone through, the pain, the agony, the struggles, the fear, the disbelief, the no hope, to now having hope, having some joy.
It literally has been just completely and utterly life-changing. It's actually hard to put into words. It's like an actual miracle.